Okay, we have talked about the while loop, which in pseudocode and flowchart technology is called do while. Do while is a pretest loop. Loop condition must be tested before anything in the loop can be done or loop can be entered. In this lecture, I'm mostly going to talk about another kind of loops which are called post-test loops, which means loop has to be run at least once and only after that the loop condition is tested. I'm also going to talk about for loops which are not post-test loop. For loop is a pretest loop. It's a simplified version of something called count control loop. Okay. This is just the review of structures we have done so far. Sequence structure, you enter the computer program, you do one statement, next, next, and you keep doing it until you reach the end of the program. The Walmart coin machine program we did was of that nature. Then we have selection structure, which is if and else. We enter the structure, we test some condition. If it is true, we'll do one task. If it is false, we'll do other task, and we can exit. Overtime salary calculation program was of this nature. Then we have the loop, where we enter the loop. If the condition is true, then we do the task. If condition is false, we exit the loop. And you did an assignment on that we calculated bonus for many athletes who had different rushing yardage in the season. And if you have not done that, you will probably do it. And understand, of course, that's all you need to do for general programming. And you can nest structures within inside each other. You could have a bunch of sequences, then you can put a selection there, you can put a loop there, you can put loop inside the selection structure, like loop could be a task here, or there could be if and else inside the loop task. Okay, case I'm not going to talk about right now. I'll talk about that later on. But this is the structure for a do until loop that we test some condition Q. Okay, I'm sorry. This Q is the task. We do some task Q, we test the condition P. If condition P is true, we do the task again. And we test the condition P again. Of course, the task may include changing the condition P. And if condition P is false, then we exit. Okay. All right. Basically, as I said before, we have only two types of loops: pretest and posttest. Okay. In pretest, the condition is tested before the loop is entered. In posttest, you have to run the loop at least once, and after that the condition is tested. And if condition is true, then the loop can be run again. Okay. And of course, we also define loop as count control, sentinel control, EOF, and a file type where it's reading a file, or flag control. Last three, sentinel, EOF, and flag, are called event control. So pretest and posttest could be either of these type as well. Okay. And as I said earlier, the do while I discussed earlier was a pretest loop. Do until is a posttest loop. For loop that we are going to talk about, which is very useful for arrays, is a pretest loop. Here's the brief summary of both types of loop. Okay. In pretest loop, whether it's a do while, whether it uses a while or a for we'll talk later, you have to have a prime read. Prime read we set the value of this expression q. If q is true, then we do a task A, and the task A may involve changing the condition q. So thus we test the q again. If it is true, we do this again. As long as q is true, we stay in this loop. A time may come that task A may change the q to false. If that is the case, we exit q. Okay. So keep doing A while Boolean expression q is true. So this is called a pretest loop. However, interesting thing here is that depending upon the value of the prime read, it could be that q is false to begin with. You can say, why have the loop? Well, yeah, in that case loop is not needed. But that's a possibility in the program that might exist. So loop may not be executed at all. So pretest loop has this condition, this property, that there is a possibility that they may not execute at all. Posttest loop must execute at least once. This is the do until loop, or a generic posttest loop. You actually enter the structure and actually you do the task at least once. And then you test the condition q. If that is true, then you go back again and do the task again. Okay? But if condition became false as a result of doing this task A, which would include, of course, changing this condition, then you will exit. So here we can say keep doing the task A until the Boolean expression q is true. Or if you want to write in the pseudocode language, you have the word do, the task, and until q has become false. Until q has not become false. Okay? Alright. In this lecture, my emphasis is that I wish to teach about posttest loops. Do until is being used as a generic name for posttest loops. And the word until may or may not be used by the programming language you would use for coding. For example, Visual Basic has do until. But the similar functionality in other languages like JavaScript, Java, etc., C++, is used by something called do while. But this characteristic will be important, that posttest loop is that it is executed at least for one iteration. So that's something that would be common whether we call it do until or do while. Okay, let's say we want to add 6 numbers. Here's the flow chart. We set a counter count to 0. Accumulation is like the sum variable. Here we enter the loop. So this connector symbol means I'm entering the loop. So here I initialize the loop variable and the my variable for keeping the sum. So I read the data, which means I prompt the user for the data. And I say accum equal to accum plus data. And I'm going to increase the counter by 1. And here my condition is that until count is not 6. If this condition is true, then of course I'll go back here. So notice it doesn't matter what the value of count was. This part, read data, this and this, they'll be executed at least once. Okay? So this loop will run until count becomes 6. When count becomes 6, count not equal to 6 will be false, and then we'll exit the loop and will write the value of accum. In case of JavaScript on the web page, other languages, depending upon what you're using for output. Here's the pseudocode. Start, we set the accum to 0, count to 0, use the word do, read data, accum equal to accum plus data, count equal to count plus 1, until, notice the lagging word until, count has not reached 6. Write accum and stop. You can ignore this because the textbook I was using, this style is different from that, but you're not using that textbook, so don't worry about that. And we can ignore this also. Here's the post-test syntax in 4 languages. 4 languages means C++, C, Java, and C#. This is one of the syntax, and this is true in JavaScript also. I have the word do first, left curly brace, statements, right curly brace, the word while, and inside the parentheses I have the Boolean expression and the semicolon. This semicolon is required, by the way. This may be a bit confusing, but it is required. And loop exits when this Boolean expression here becomes false. And in 4 languages, and including JavaScript, there will be 5 languages, the word until is not used. And it could be something like this, that I set C to 0. In JavaScript it will become var C equal to 0. And do while C, the task is C equal to C plus 1, and this will keep going until C becomes 10. When C becomes 10, C not equal to 10 will be false, so we'll exit the loop. So these are the example in JavaScript and other languages. But in Visual Basic, which of course we're not teaching here, but we should talk about it just a little bit. The syntax is that there's the word do, there are statements, and the word loop, until, and there's a Boolean expression here. And here's the example, that C as an integer, C equal to 0, do C equal to C plus 1 until C equal to 10. So notice, compared to previous slide, we said while C is not 10, but in Visual Basic we say loop until C equal to 10. When C becomes 10, then you exit. So really effect is the same, but the condition is different. Okay. So loop exits when C equal to 10 becomes true. All right. And VB allows also do while, which is do statements, loop while. And the same program that I wrote here can be written as follows. C got declared here, C got set to 0 here, do C equal to C plus 1, loop while not C equal to 10. Okay. Or I could have used, for not, I could have used this inside. Then I wouldn't have used the word not here. Okay. Okay, so these are the styles in Visual Basic. General rule to remember is this: if programming language uses the word while in the looping structure, then loop will exit when the loop control Boolean expression evaluates to false. If word until is used in the structure, then loop will exit when loop control Boolean expression evaluates to true. So in one case it exits when Boolean expression is true, other case, in this case true, in this case false. All right. 4 languages and JavaScript do not use the word until. Visual Basic has the while and the until. Okay, and it has also something else like do until and expression statements and loop. This is not a post-test loop. Once again, VB has lots of loops, so but we won't talk about that too much here. All right, you can look at this code in C++. It will be in the handouts. I will not go through that. I suppose I could do that code in JavaScript. So let me actually do that for you. And basically, if I were to take, let's see, let's go back for a second and implement this flow chart in JavaScript, and in a minute I will do that for you. I'll just get a notepad or something and do it inside that. But basically I'm going to declare a var count, var accum. I'll do the window.prompt here to read some data. Actually, I'll need one more variable called data, and then I will sum it, and here I'll check that count is not 6. Okay, so that's pretty much what I'm going to do. So if you can hold on for a second. I've not used Mac very much, so what I can do here is really maybe just yeah. Alright, I'm going to stop this movie here and then start a second movie where I will show you how to do while using this flowchart in JavaScript, because it's going to take me some time to write that program and then show it to you. So here's the end of the movie number 1, and I'll see you very soon in the movie number 2.